Hey there, true believers, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be ranking the Spider-Man movies. This is my own personal ranking as it is right now. It's not, I wouldn't say it's the most popular opinions for some folk, but you know, it is what it is. I'm not going to be mentioning the Venom films because I haven't watched them and I don't care to do so. I will add them to the collection eventually, but I don't care about watching them. And also, Spider-Verse won't be in this movie. Into the Spider-Verse, because I think that's its own thing. It's a really good movie. It's definitely high up there. If you were going to put these all together, it's definitely one of the best Spider-Man movies. In some people's opinion, it is the best. But I'm just not going to put it in here because it's live action. It's kind of its own thing, and it also revolves around Miles Morales. So it's not really... like I said, I think I'd put it in its own thing, but it is a really good movie, and I want to watch it again. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it in quite a while now, so... But that won't be a part of this list. There's 8 movies. I don't know why I did that, but there's 8 movies, but there's only going to be 7 spots because there is a tie between 2 movies, and we'll see why we'll see which movies are at the tie. But number 7, it's got to be probably Spider-Man Far From Home. Spider-Man Far From Home is actually a really good movie. I think it's a pretty good movie. It's a pretty good MCU movie at that. It's just not my favorite Spider-Man movie. I'm not a big fan of it. I think it's got a good story. The characters are well done for the most part. And I don't really enjoy it until, like, as a Spider-Man movie, I don't really enjoy it until Peter and Happy are in the jet. From then on, I think it's pretty good, but to the lead up, I'm just not a big fan of it. I don't think it really works as being a Spider-Man fan. Now, to give you my opinion on Spider-Man, my favorite Spider-Man is Tobey Maguire. Because that was my first exposure to the character. Now, I understand that there's differences between Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and the classic Spider-Man, but, like, my first exposure to Spider-Man was the Tobey Maguire movies and also the 90s animated series. I have a lot of nostalgia for the first movie, and I also have a lot of nostalgia for the third movie because I used to watch I watched that thing so many times that I had to replace it a whole bunch because I was 4 when that movie came out. So I'm a big Tobey Maguire Spider-Man fan. That is my Spider-Man. I enjoy other versions of Spider-Man just as much. The PS4 Spider-Man is one of my favorites, and I also love the Ultimate Peter Parker. That whole line right there, that whole series of comic books is one of my favorite comic runs, if you want to call it a run. I mean, it's a little bit longer than a run, but I just love the entire thing. I think it's really good. I like what they do with the characters. I like what they do with Peter Parker and Mary Jane. And also, Ultimate Spider-Man has a lot of similarities to the Tobey Maguire movies, as well as, like, kind of ignoring Gwen Stacy as the first love interest. And also, there's some other things that you could get into there, but I don't want to get into all of it right now. But there's some similarities between Ultimate Peter Parker and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. But for number 7, it's going to be Spider-Man Far From Home. I really like the score. Michael Giacchino does a fantastic job with all of the Spider-Man themes, all of the themes, and all of the movies, especially No Way Home. The characters, like I said, the characters are pretty good for their own kind of thing. But, like, for what I think Spider-Man should be, it's just not up there. I don't like it as much. But there's a lot of things I like about Spider-Man Far From Home. It's the most well put together movie out of some of them, but it's just not, it doesn't get Peter Parker right, in my opinion. After that, it would probably be Spider-Man 3. So number 6 is Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3, I used to love it as a little kid as, like, a Spider-Man movie. It's just to just watch it because that was when I just liked Spider-Man because he was Spider-Man. Now, obviously, I like Spider-Man for all the different things that he represents and what he stands for, and then he's a much deeper character than what you realize as a kid. Spider-Man 3 has great music. Christopher Young does a great job. I like Venom, Sandman, and I like New Goblin separately. I think Venom is a really good representation of Venom. I think I think the way they did Sandman makes that character very, very interesting. And I also like the way they do Harry Osborn's story. If they were in different movies, or if it was just 2 in this movie, or some of them were left out. But if each villain in this movie was in its own movie, I think that we would all give them much more respect. It's really just at the end of the day, they don't have enough time to shine. But I think each one of them in their own right, has the ability to be a really good character. And the way that the story was wrapped up, I do enjoy it for the most part. But it doesn't feel quite the same as Spider-Man 1 and 2, and that's what puts it a little bit low. And it's not as good as a film as some of the other ones, but it's not bad in my opinion. I don't think any of the Spider-Man movies are just bad. There's just some things that I don't agree with when it comes to the Tom Holland Spider-Mans, or with some of the choices that they made in this one. But number 6, I really do, or number 6, like I said, is Spider-Man 3. I really enjoy Spider-Man 3 as well, but number 5 is going to be The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, most people would put The Amazing Spider-Man 2 at the very last. But I remember, the day that I got The Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's not something I've seen in theaters, but I remember the day that I got it on DVD. I also remember the day that I got it on Blu-ray. And I have multiple versions of it on Blu-ray now as well, but I remember the first time I watched that, and I remember me and my mom laughing at the scene, like the chimney scene and stuff like that. So as like when I was younger, it was a good movie to watch, as it was a good Spider-Man movie to watch. It kept me entertained, and it felt like a good movie. At the time, I still knew that Tobey Maguire is my favorite Spider-Man, but for different reasons than it is now. Once The Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out, I was 11, so I was still a little bit young to appreciate some of the things that I appreciate now. But as I've gotten older, I kind of fell out of love with the Andrew Garfield movies when I was a little bit older, because I watched a lot of different YouTube videos and stuff like that, and different people's rankings of like Spider-Man 1 versus Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2 versus The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I watched a lot of these different videos, and I let some of those people influence my opinions a lot more than I'd like to admit. But as I've gotten older now, and over the last few years, I started to really appreciate Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. Mostly it came down to, I remember watching this one video of Amy Adams interviewing Andrew Garfield and him interviewing her, and he talked about how the way that they did those movies, it broke his heart. And after that, I've just had so much respect for Andrew Garfield, and he is my favorite actor to play Spider-Man. But I also really love him because he has so much love for the character. You can tell that out of all of them, he has so much love for the character. Like Tom Holland says he has a lot of love for the character too, but if you watch some of the different interviews, like there's this one interview where like Tom Holland was with Jacob and Zendaya, and there was like, they're talking about some of the different things and different things about the character's powers and stuff like that. And Tom just doesn't talk about Spider-Man the way that Andrew Garfield does. Andrew Garfield has a real love for the character, and I think that that's something that that shouldn't be overlooked. You know, he might not be everybody's favorite Spider-Man, he might not be everybody's Peter Parker, but he damn sure loves that character, and he deserves as much respect as you can get. As for the music, I love James Horner's theme for The Amazing Spider-Man, and I also really love Hans Zimmer's theme, and everybody else who came along. I don't remember everybody's name off the top of my head, but the Amazing Spider-Man 2 soundtrack is incredible in my opinion. It's really, really good. I think Dane DeHaan does a great job with what he's given. I think Jamie Foxx is very entertaining. They're not great villains, but I think that the job that they brought, the work that they brought to the table was overall very good. I think Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, of course, everybody knows that they do a great job. But Aunt May in this movie, I really love Aunt May in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The connection that Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker, and I forget the actress that plays her, but the Amazing Spider-Man series is Aunt May. The connection that they have is very, very strong, and I really like it. And I'm personally one of the people that doesn't mind the Richard Parker storyline. I do understand where people are coming from, where it says that like one of the reasons The Amazing Spider-Man 2 doesn't sit with them very well is that basically Peter was destined to become Spider-Man, and in the comic books it's very much he's the everyman, and he was just this kid that was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But to be fair, Spider-Man 2 is a lot of people's favorite Spider-Man movie of all time, and if you look at some of the posters for the Spider-Man 2, some of them have Destiny on the poster. Like, it's written, some of them say choice on the poster, some of them say Destiny. So, I mean, you can argue whether Peter Parker was destined to be Spider-Man or not. He still represents the everyman, right? But I think you can have an argument saying that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But you can also have an argument saying that this was his destiny. You know, there's like in the Ultimate comic books, they say that, I believe it's the Ultimate comic books where they say that Captain America's like, he's the best of us. You know, he's the best. And there's some versions of the character that are recognized as the greatest superhero of all time in the Marvel Universe. So, that's just up for debate. That's that's your own personal preference. For me, it doesn't really bother me. I like the idea of him being an everyman and him being just at the wrong place at the wrong time, but I think that there's a place for both stories. I'm trying to think of anything else. I like to see like Oscorp's dark side, like them trying to cover things up and hide different things and use different things to manipulate people and also use things to their advantage, like to do with Dane DeHaan, his Harry Osborn. I think there's a lot of good stuff to like in this movie. I really like the little kid in the movie. I think he represents a lot of us when we're younger. I think the weakest part of this movie is just Rhino. I think that's the weakest part. I think everything else is good. It's just kind of like like Spider-Man 3, where it just not all of it needs to be in this movie. I don't think there's anything that's really bad in either one of those movies. They're just overstuffed. So that is number 5. Number 4 would be the amazing... No, it wouldn't. It would be Spider-Man Homecoming. So number 4 is Spider-Man Homecoming. I really enjoyed Spider-Man Homecoming when I first watched it in theaters. The Stark tech suit didn't bother me as much as it bothers other people. And I really, really enjoy it from the point of Michael Keaton and Tom Holland when they're in the car. I really, really enjoy it from that point on. The only part of it after that point, the only point that I would change is his motivation for getting out of the rubble. The background, what we hear of like him talking to Tony Stark and we hear Tony Stark's voice, that's like the only thing I would change. And I would also change the way that they did the music. But I really enjoyed that movie as well. We get to see, that young Peter Parker that's eager to be a hero, that's eager to be an Avenger. It's not something that we always really see him want to be, but I think it works in this instance. I think there's a lot of things I like about Spider-Man Homecoming. It's not my favorite Spider-Man. At least he wasn't. He has what they've done in No Way Home. He has the ability to become my favorite Spider-Man now, or the most accurate version, or whatever you want. Well, he's not going to be the most accurate version in terms of how he got to that point, but going forward, he could be a very, very good Spider-Man and very comic accurate. But Spider-Man Homecoming, it's a really good movie on its own. It's just not. It's not what I would do with the character. A lot of the problems that I had with Tom Holland's Spider-Man get changed and get fixed, and I'm really happy to say that, but these two movies, Homecoming and Far From Home, are just not, they're not it for me. But I gotta put Homecoming higher than Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 just because I think that it does stuff a lot better than Far From Home does. I don't really enjoy Far From Home until the jet scene, and I enjoy Homecoming all the way through. I just really like it once Michael Keaton and Tom are in the car. I really enjoy it from that point on. But I like the whole movie. I really like Ned. He's a fresher breath air. He's a breath of fresh air. And I like Zendaya in this movie. I like the other characters that bounce off. I really like the teachers in this, in Far From Home as well. I think they're pretty funny. And in Homecoming, or in No Way Home. But so my number 4 would be Spider-Man Homecoming. The Amazing Spider-Man 3 is going to be number 3. I mean, The Amazing Spider-Man is going to be number 3. The Amazing Spider-Man holds a special place in my heart just because I remember the day that I got that movie. The night that it came out on DVD, the night it came out on Blu-ray, my mom and me went up to Walmart at like 1 o'clock in the morning. We went up there and we bought the movie. They didn't even have any of them on the shelf yet. They were in the process of putting it on the shelf. The guy went back to grab a box. He gave us the movie, and we went out to check out, and we brought it home, and we watched it. And by the time all that happened, my mom fell asleep during the middle of the movie, but I watched it all the way through. And I have a very, very special place in my heart for that movie. Even though getting done with the movie, I watched it, and I was like, it's not what I recognize. It's not Tobey Maguire. You know, it's not what I've come to know from Spider-Man, but it holds a special place in my heart. I can remember telling my aunt and my uncle to watch it because I really, really enjoyed it. I remember wanting to get the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man suit from Toys R Us. I remember getting the game when it came out. I remember getting the Hasbro 3 3/4 inch of Lizard, I can't talk for shit today, of Lizard and Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man first film holds a special place in my heart. It's very different from all the other ones. It has a grounded, gritty feel. The suit, I've always really loved the Amazing Spider-Man 1 suit. I think it's really, really good. The music in the movie is heartwarming and very special and unique. And some say that the origin story is a cheap copy of what Sam Raimi did, but I think the only reason it feels like that is because they're both very accurate to his origin. They represent both of those movies represent Peter Parker's origin to a T. They do a great job. The Amazing Spider-Man leaves out the wrestling, and the Raimi one leaves out some other things. But they both do a really, really good job, and both Uncle Bens, I think, are really, really good characters. In this movie, we get to see Uncle Ben. We get to see Uncle Ben that's much more like a father figure. We get to see a man that's he's trying to teach Peter the lessons that he's tried to learn his own life. Or, I don't really know how to put this in words, but it's almost like we get to see a real father figure. We get to see a real parent struggle to teach their kids what it means to live in this world, what it means to be a good person and to make a difference in the world, while also trying to live by those lessons yourself. I mean, I think it's Cliff Robertson who plays Uncle Ben in Spider-Man 1. He seems like he's already got shit all figured out. He seems like he's a guy that's been living this type of life. He's been living these lessons his whole life. And he's just passing them down onto Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker. But Martin Sheen's Peter Parker, or Uncle Ben, he represents what it really is like to be a father, what it really is like to be a parent, at least in my opinion, what I can see. You try to teach your kids these lessons, you try to teach them how to be a good person, but also you're trying to live by those lessons yourself. Just because you're a parent doesn't mean you have everything all figured out. And I think their version of Uncle Ben represents that very well. So doesn't Aunt May. Aunt May feels like a real person in this movie. You can see how scared she is when Peter doesn't come home at night, and you can see how much it worries her and that she stays up, and Peter's just like, he's not getting the message that what you're doing is frightening other people and what you're doing is affecting other people. He's just out on his own mission and on his own accord. We get to see at the dinner table when he's talking to Captain Stacy, and Captain Stacy's another great character in this movie. We get to see Captain Stacy really, what he says really hits home for Peter, and he realizes that what he's doing is not really being a superhero, even though he thought that at first. He realizes what he's doing is very selfish. So his first act as Spider-Man is to go and save a bunch of people on a bridge from a giant lizard. There's a lot of great things about The Amazing Spider-Man. I think that they just do things differently. But there's so many good things. Like, Andrew Garfield does a great job in this movie in terms of, like, you can see, like, you don't really see this in any other Andrew Garfield movie. The way he acts as Peter Parker is really weird. Like, he's very twitchy and nervous, and he does these, like, weird movements with his body and his eyes and his mouth that you don't see him do in any other movies, because he's playing Peter Parker. He's playing what he thinks Peter Parker should act like, and he does a great job. And you know it's an act because at the end of the movie, we get to see the development of the character. At the end of the movie, we get to see him become much more confident and strong and comfortable in his own skin, and you see that carried over to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Peter's aneurysms and his movements have its own little character arc, if you will. And Andrew Garfield did a really good job doing that. And I don't think that's something that anybody else's opinion was. I think that was just something that he put in his own accord. But Emma Stone does a really good job in this movie, and I really, really like the Lizard. I don't think he's a bad character, and I think anybody who says that he looks retarded in this movie or doesn't look good or anything like that doesn't know their ass from their elbow, because the CGI in this movie is almost 10 years old, and it still looks phenomenal. It looks better than No Way Home. It looks fantastic. Whether you like the design of the Lizard or not is irrelevant, because it still looks really good. His skin, his scales, the way he moves, the way he walks, everything about the character. He doesn't seem like just this floating little CGI thing. No, he's tangible. He feels real. The way his eyes move, the way his eyes look around. just everything about every fight scene in this movie with him and Spider-Man just looks so real and tangible. That's one of the things that some of the newer Spider-Man movies have, is that's a nice word, tangible, is it doesn't feel real. It was amazing to see Spider-Man show up in Civil War, but as good as the suit looked, it didn't feel real. Lizard feels real. Lizard feels tangible. Every CGI version of Spider-Man in this movie feels real, feels tangible, feels like you can reach out and grab him. They use the CGI appropriately. And the same can be said for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has some of the best visual effects I've seen in any comic book movie, along with The Amazing Spider-Man 1. Also, I know that some of the people are used to seeing, like, when you think of, like, the movie suits, you can, like, the mask and the torso, or the mask and the chest is all, like, one piece. Usually they have a little zipper in the back so you can pull his head out. But those are the scenes that they use for most of the suit-up scenes. And then they'll cut away when they want to move the mask off or put it back on. When he's fighting Lizard in the school, and it's around the time you see the Stan Lee cameo, when you actually watch him, just before he takes the mask off in that scene, he's actually wearing the two-piece mask in that scene. And I thought that was really cool, because in that scene, it actually looks pretty good. You can tell that the mask is it's tucked into his neck. And on screen, you don't really get to see them do that on screen. And in this, it could be just this suit. This suit just has a really good way of looking homemade, and looking like something somebody could create. Even though the only reason I don't like this suit is because I don't like when they make Peter Parker's suit too complicated, because this is something that he has to make and it gets torn up, and the more complicated the design is, I've always thought that the more expensive it is to make. That's why I'm not a big fan of the Marvel's Avengers design. That's why I'm not a huge fan of the Advanced suit in the PS4, even though in the PS4 game it was designed by Doc Ock, so that kind of gives it a little bit of leeway. But the more complicated that the pattern is, the more expensive it is to make. But that's besides the point. In this scene, you get to see him like with the two-piece of the mask and the actual suit, and I thought it looked really good on screen. I think they could do that more often, and it wouldn't look bad. But anyway, I think this movie has a lot to offer as well. I think it's really, really good. It still is not the cream of the crop what I think Spider-Man is, but it's damn close. And I think if the Sam Raimi movies never happened, then I think the Andrew Garfield movies would be looked at very, very differently. I don't think there's very much else I can say about it. I'm really, really big fan of The Amazing Spider-Man. I don't know. There's not anything else that's popping out right now, but you got the father and the mother, the whole background there. It leaves it intriguing. I think some people think it's repetitive in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is true, kind of, but I think it's a little undertone that goes throughout this movie that I think raises questions and it keeps you intrigued. You know, like an example of raising questions and keeping you intrigued that when it's not done properly is something like a Halloween 5, where they put the man in you got the what do they call him? I don't remember what they call him. The guy who comes off the bus, there's a specific name that everybody gives him. But when he comes off the bus and you can see him with his little stupid boots and he's all the Man in Black. They call him that. You see him in different scenes of Halloween 5. That was literally put in the movie just to raise questions, or just to keep the audience intrigued, because they knew what they had was a shitty film. I enjoy Halloween 5 for what it is, but it's not great. It's not a good Halloween movie. The father and the mother aspect, Peter Parker's parents in this movie, it kind of rides that same wave where it's like this raises questions and it keeps you intrigued, but it's there for a reason. They're specifically there to explore later. And I don't think Mark Webb got the chance to explore it the way that he wanted to. And also something else I wanted to mention, if we wind back just a little bit to The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the whole time theme in that movie is phenomenal. It's really good. It's something that we didn't really get to see in other Spider-Man movies, or even really other comic book movies, but time gets us all. Time defeats us all, right? And I think that's one of the, if you go back and you listen to Mark Webb talk about what he wanted time to represent in that movie, it might change your opinion on the movie, because it definitely changed my opinion on it. I had thoughts about what I wanted to say in this video, and I remember The Amazing Spider-Man 2 much more revolved around that time aspect, but I don't remember exactly what I thought. And exactly what I had to say about that, but it does play a big role into that part of how I feel about that movie. But anyway, moving back to The Amazing Spider-Man 3, or oh my god, The Amazing Spider-Man number 3. I don't think there's a whole lot more to talk about. But number 2, we got 3 movies left. We got Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man No Way Home. Number 2 is going to be Spider-Man No Way Home. First time I watched that movie, I watched it in theaters, and it didn't affect me the way that I thought it would. If you want to know more about how I felt leading into my second and even third, actually, I've watched it a third time since I did that video. And I'm probably going to go ahead and watch it again with my buddy Colin. But I think I made that video after my second one, and I've gone back and watched it again. I watched it on the damn night. I watched it Friday the night it came out. Well, it came out on Thursday, but I watched it the Friday. I watched it on Monday the 20th, and I also watched it on Christmas. And I'm going to go ahead and watch it again soon. If you want to know how I felt about the movie after my first viewing, you can go watch that video. But after I've gotten to watch it another 2 times, my opinions on that movie have just gotten better and better. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't a big fan of the Aunt May thing, what she says to Peter. I wasn't a big fan of that at first, but after watching it again and then again, I really, really enjoy it, and the emotions hit me hard the second and third time. The awes, the moments of like Toby and Andrew coming in, they didn't affect me the first time, and I don't know why, but after the second and third time, it just got better and better, and the emotions hit me harder and harder, and everything just became more special and more entertaining, and the music and the cinematography, and the emotion and the fan service and the nostalgia and everything, just, and what they do for Tom Holland's Peter Parker in this movie is absolutely incredible. Every problem that I had with the character, they have completely fixed. He gets those consequences, and he learns the lesson of with great power comes great responsibility. And we were told to assume that he had already learned that lesson based off Civil War. But you can clearly see off of Homecoming and off of Far From Home, he has not learned that lesson. And he got taught that lesson by the second best person who can teach him that lesson. I know a lot of people wanted to see Tobey Maguire say it, and I did as well. But in a way, we still got them to share that moment of Tobey finishing the line. Now, they do a little bit of continuity bending with this, where they act as if Uncle Ben said that to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man 2. I mean, he did in a way. He said it in his own way, but he didn't say the words, with great power come great responsibility. But the way he says it still fits in with the story, and I think it still works pretty well. And I don't know. This movie, it hits hard. It hits hard for me. The first movie that I really cried for a Spider-Man movie was The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And subsequently now I go back and watch some of the other ones, and they affect me hard because of how much I love this character and how much it means to me. Especially if you watch some of those Spider-Man tribute videos, you watch some of the best moments from each of these movies. The Aunt May scene in Spider-Man 2, and then the Gwen's death in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 are some of the ones that hit me the hardest. And then also when Harry comes to save Peter in Spider-Man 3, and then also when Harry dies. Those are some of the moments that hit me the hardest. When Harry comes in and he grabs Peter's hand and the music starts playing, it gets me every time. But there's some good stuff that I left out. But anyway, No Way Home does a fantastic job. I think its biggest flaws are the CGI for Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. And I think that those things could have been done better. I think that they could have used less CGI, and I think they could have had on-set. They could have had versions of the suits that are full masked. Now, I don't know whether they had that or not, because there's a scene where Andrew is standing on the Statue of Liberty talking to Max, and his suit looks really good there, and he's got the mask on. But every other scene where he's got the mask on, it doesn't look right. And every scene of Toby having the mask on, it doesn't look right either. So I don't know what their deal was with that. But that was my biggest complaint going into the movie, or coming out of the movie, all 3 times. This is the thing that got me the most. In the scene where, like, Andrew comes through the portal, and he jumps, and it's like, why are you CGI right now? There's no reason for you to be CGI. That's literally my only problem with the movie. And I think the only other thing is they could have been a little bit more loud and impactful and epic with Toby and Andrew's music. I think they could have done that a little bit more, or even done a way to mix all 3 themes together for the group shot that they do, instead of just using Tom's theme. I understand why this is Tom's movie, but this is also something that's special for a lot of other people. I think that they do a good job for the most part, but I think that the epic returns that these characters should have gotten should have felt more epic in terms of the music and in terms of how they looked. I think the characterization of all three characters is very true to who they are, and they do a great job. And I love the back and forth and the comedy. None of the comedy felt flat for me like it does in some of the other home Spider-Man movies. I think they did a great job. I love Ned, I love Zendaya, I love Toby and Andrew and Tom, all their back and forth, the villains, oh my god, Willem Dafoe. Green Goblin is my favorite, by far my favorite villain when it comes to DC or Marvel. I don't care. I like him better than the Joker, even though he's very, very similar. Even though I think Carnage is more closely related to Joker than Green Goblin is. In terms of how they stack up against their villain, or their counterpart, Green Goblin and Joker are very much the yin-yang to Batman and Spider-Man. A lot of people love Venom, though. I don't understand why they love Venom so much. I like Venom. I'm a big fan of Venom, but I don't think he's the best Spider-Man villain. Because he's literally just he's a tokenized version of Spider-Man. Well, he's not really tokenized, but he's just a cheap copy of Spider-Man. The only cool thing about Venom, in my opinion, that it works as a villain is the fact that he is blind, or he can get past, he can attack Spider-Man without him activating his spider sense. That's the coolest thing about the character. But he's not even a villain most of the time. So I'm not a big fan of Venom. I don't care. I like the character of Eddie Brock, but like Venom, I don't know. I don't like Venom. People don't like that. People aren't gonna like it, but I'm not a big fan of Venom. I like Carnage a lot. Carnage is one of my favorites, but I'm not a big fan of Venom. Why do I keep saying Van? Big fan of Venom. Anyway, the number one spot goes to, you guessed it, Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 are tied for me, because for the longest time, Spider-Man 1 was my favorite Spider-Man movie. Because I loved it so much. It gave me the nostalgia, it gave me the feels, and on top of that, it's a really, really good movie. It's a great origin story. It's got great characters. It's got humanity. It's got human moments. It's got that humanity that you want in a Spider-Man movie, stronger than any other Spider-Man movie besides maybe Spider-Man 2 and maybe now Homecoming. But it's got these moments where it hits you hard, and you can the banter between Tobey and Kristen Dunst hits hard for me. It doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel cringy like some of the other people think. I think that their chemistry really works, and I think it's cute, and also I think it feels real. It feels like two real people talking to each other, and I just love it. I love Harry in this movie. I love Aunt May in this movie. But it's just shy of Spider-Man 2, because as much as I have nostalgia for Spider-Man 1, because it feels like an early 2000s movie, and it's got this sort of feel to it, and I don't care what anybody says, I'm a Nickelback fan, and I love Josie Scott and Chad Kroeger's song Hero in this movie. I love What We're All About by Sum 41. The end credits of this, or the credits of this movie where they play the 60s Spider-Man theme, I love all of it. I love the entire movie. I love the DVD menu. I love everything about Spider-Man 1. It's got that nostalgia that I like. Spider-Man 2 has all of those things, but I would say the reason I love it is not because of nostalgia. If you noticed earlier, I said I have a lot of nostalgia for Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 3. I don't think I have nostalgia for Spider-Man 2, but it's not on the same level for why I like it. I've come to, like, my opinions on it have changed through liking it as a Spider-Man movie, and now liking it just because of it's a great movie. It's a really well done movie. I don't think you need to have Spider-Man No Way Home doesn't need to be the best Spider-Man movie because it's got all three Spider-Mans in it. It's got all the Venoms, all the villains that we've seen, besides a couple. It's not the best It's not the best Spider-Man movie because it's epic. It's what people like about it the most is what they do about the characters. At least in my opinion, I think that's the best part of No Way Home is it's the characters and what they do for the characters. And Spider-Man 2 is a great movie because it serves its characters. The characters feel real, they feel grounded, they feel more human than any other comic book movie. Except maybe like the Dark Knight movies, but this one they feel hopeful and they feel innocent. And it's almost like I don't know how to explain it. I really don't. I don't know how to explain my love for Spider-Man 2. But I know that it will always be my favorite. If I know I'm going to watch one Spider-Man movie today, it's either going to be Spider-Man 1 or Spider-Man 2. But as a better movie, I think it's Spider-Man 2. But I'll put either one in. Either one gives me what I want. Either one, it's interchangeable in terms of, will I watch this or will I watch that? I am able to recognize that Spider-Man 2 is a better movie, and it just gets everything so right, and it gets everything perfect, and you realize how much Peter Parker's life sucks and how much it just gets everything right. But Spider-Man 1, it's got its place in here. You know, it's got a place in my heart, and I don't know. They're the cream of the crop in my opinion, and you can't get much better than them. Spider-Man, for what they've done with Tom Holland's character, has set them up to make the best Peter Parker movie, best Spider-Man movie of all time. They have the ability to do that. And if they make the Amazing Spider-Man 3, they have the ability to do that as well. But there's so much innocence and small world type vibes that you get from Spider-Man 1 and 2. Everything feels so tight and it feels small. Nothing is trying to be big. Nothing's trying to set anything else up. Nothing is trying to be bigger and badder. And I think that's why they shine so much, is because those type of movies can get you to just enjoy it for what it is instead of anticipating what's to come. Amy Pascal said in a recent interview that we want to outdo ourselves in quality, not quantity, or something to the effect of that, in terms of making more Spider-Man movies and not being bigger and badder and more of just being, just taking the characters to new places. I'm excited about that. I don't think you can get much bigger than No Way Home in terms of right now. You have to build it back up. But Spider-Man 1 and 2 are they're the bomb for me. But I will say, I do love me some Andrew Garfield, and that is a painting that I'm working on. And I thought I'd show you guys that real quick. But I've come out of No Way Home loving Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire. I love all of them as Spider-Man. But I will always have a favorite. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. I apologize for this video being so long and me stumbling over my words because I don't know. I can't talk whenever I put a camera on, but it's okay. We'll get better eventually. But, you know, all that being said, I hope you guys do well and have a great new year. And until next time, true believers.